The day I found out, my truck was in the shop for brake pads, and Tommy, one of my lead guys, dropped me off at the house around 2 in the afternoon instead of back at the office. It was a Tuesday. I had a scheduling call at 3 that I was going to take from the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I saw my sister's car in the driveway when Tommy pulled in. That didn't register as anything unusual. She'd been coming over several times a week for the better part of 2 years. After her husband died, heart attack, no warning, he was only 43. My wife and I had made a point of keeping her close. We didn't want her sitting alone in the house she'd shared with him for 12 years. So she came for dinners, came for weekends, came over on random afternoons to sit with my wife while I was at work. I thought it was one of the most generous things about my wife, that she took my family's grief seriously enough to absorb it into her own schedule. I thanked Tommy, grabbed my laptop bag from the back seat, and walked to the front door. The house was quiet, no television, no music. I called my wife's name from the entryway. Nothing. I figured she was upstairs, maybe on the phone. I went to the kitchen first, put my bag on the table, poured a glass of water. Then I heard something from upstairs, not loud, just there. My brain was still in work mode, still running through the afternoon's agenda. I went up the stairs. The bedroom door was open a few inches. I pushed it. I won't describe what I saw in detail. You already understand. The only thing I'll say is that for a moment, my mind simply refused to process it. The image was there, fully formed, but the meaning of it lagged behind by about 5 full seconds. And then it didn't. My sister scrambled for the sheet. My wife said my name. I turned around and walked back down the stairs. I sat in the kitchen for maybe 3 minutes. Then I picked up my laptop bag, walked out the front door, and sat in the flower bed beside the driveway, because I didn't have my truck and I didn't know where else to go. I sat there on the mulch, back against the brick, and I just breathed. My wife came out 10 minutes later, wrapped in her robe, saying my name over and over, like it was a question. I looked up at her once, then I looked back at the street. "Go inside," I said. She did. My sister left through the garage. She drove past me without stopping. I called a cab and went to a coffee shop 2 miles away. I sat in the corner booth for 3 hours. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just sat there, and somewhere in the middle of that second cup of coffee, something in me went quiet and cold and very clear. I called my attorney from the parking lot before I left. Here's what no one tells you about discovering something like that. The shock only lasts a little while. After it fades, what's left isn't grief. It's inventory. Your brain starts cataloging everything. Every trip your wife took that felt slightly off. Every time your sister canceled plans with you specifically but still showed up at the house. The way they'd both go quiet when you walked into a room they were laughing in. I used to find that charming. I used to think, look at these 2 women who love each other. I felt proud of my wife for taking care of my family like that. 19 years. We'd been married 19 years. I had built the contracting company from a 2-man operation in a leased truck to 15 employees and a fleet we owned outright. I missed things along the way. I won't pretend I was perfect. But I was there. I coached my son Wyatt's Little League team for 6 years straight. I was at every one of my daughter Bree's volleyball games, home and away, until she went off to college. I worked long hours, yes, but I never once stopped being their father or her husband. She would tell the court later that I was emotionally unavailable. That was the phrase her attorney kept using. Emotionally unavailable, like I was a voicemail box that had been full for years. I had not deleted a single voicemail. I had not deleted a single text. I had 19 years of records because running a business teaches you one thing above everything else. Write it down. Don't trust memory. Memory gets soft under pressure. Paper doesn't. What I did next matters, so I want to tell it slowly. My instinct the night of the discovery was to blow up. Call my mother. Drive back to that house and say everything burning behind my sternum. Call my sister and ask her in every specific way what she thought she was doing. I did none of those things. Not that night. Not for 2 weeks. I went home. I slept in the guest room without explanation. My wife tried to talk to me 3 separate times over the next 4 days. I told her I needed time to think. She believed me. She probably thought I was processing, that maybe I'd decide to try to save the marriage, that we'd end up in a counselor's office with a box of tissues between us. I was not processing, I was building. I pulled the security camera footage from our system. We'd put cans up a couple years back after a car got broken into on our street. I went back 16 months. I logged every day my sister's car appeared in our driveway. I logged the duration of each visit. I built a spreadsheet. On 81 of those days, her car arrived before noon and left after 3 in the afternoon. while I was at work. I met with my attorney twice that first week. Tennessee law treats adultery as a fault ground in divorce proceedings. It can affect property distribution and alimony determinations. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because the truth was going to be part of the record whether anyone liked it or not. I also sat down with my personal banker and my business accountant. I moved nothing illegally. My attorney was clear on that, and I followed her guidance exactly. But I made sure every business asset was properly documented as separate property because I had 22 years of records showing I'd started and built the company before the marriage and entirely through my own labor. I texted Bree, "I need to tell you something when you're home next weekend. Family stuff, don't worry." She texted back, "Dad, you literally just made me worry." I wrote, "I love you, don't worry." 2 weeks after that Tuesday afternoon, on a Thursday morning after Wyatt left for school, I sat down at the kitchen table with my wife. I had my phone recording from my shirt pocket. I'd told my attorney the night before, and she confirmed one-party consent is legal in this state. My wife came in from the back porch with her coffee. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. She knew immediately. I asked her when it started. She sat down. She wrapped both hands around her mug. She said about 18 months ago. I asked her if she was in love with my sister. She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said she didn't know. She said it was complicated. She said things had been building inside her that she didn't have words for, and she hadn't gone looking for anything. It just happened. I asked her whether, in 18 months, she had ever once thought about what this would do to our son. She began to cry. She said she'd tried to stop it several times. She said she knew it was wrong. I asked her if she had in fact stopped. She didn't answer. I stood up, told her to expect paperwork within the week, told her not to involve my sister in what came next, and told her that if she loved Wyatt the way she claimed to, she would make this process as clean as possible. Then I picked up my keys and left. The hardest part wasn't the proceedings themselves. The hardest part was telling my mother. She's 71, and she raised my sister and me mostly alone after my father got sick. She's the toughest woman I've ever known, and she loves her children the way women do, when they've spent everything they had on making them good. I drove to her house on a Saturday morning and told her everything before my sister had a chance to call with her version. I watched my mother sit with it. She didn't cry right away. She got very still. Then she said, "I've been noticing something between them for a while now." I told myself I was imagining it. She asked what I needed from her. I told her I didn't need anything. I just didn't want her blindsided. She nodded and went to make more coffee. My sister called my mother that Sunday, apparently to get ahead of the story. My mother told her she already knew and that she needed time. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She closed the door quietly, which, if you know my mother, is the worst possible response she could give. I also received a call from my wife's father, Harold. He was a quiet man in his mid-70s, a retired schoolteacher, and he had liked me from the beginning of my relationship with his daughter. He called to say he was sorry. He said he didn't have words for what she'd done. He said his daughter had been raised better than this and that he was ashamed. I told him he didn't need to apologize for anything. He asked if Wyatt was all right. I told him Wyatt was going to be fine. Harold sent a letter to my attorney, unsolicited, offering to testify as a character witness if I needed one. I never had to use it, but I've kept that letter. I want to stop here and tell you something from a perspective that isn't mine, because I think it's the most truthful part of this whole story. Months after the divorce was final, Bree told me about a phone call she'd had with her mother. My wife had been talking, trying to explain herself, and she said something that Bree repeated to me word for word. She said, "I kept telling myself it wasn't the same, that it didn't count the same way, that nobody would get hurt the same way, and I believed that for a while because I needed to." She said the moment she understood how wrong that thinking was, not when I found out, not when I served her with papers, but the day she sat in the courtroom and watched our son Wyatt, 16 years old, uncomfortable in a dress shirt he'd borrowed from me, tell the family court evaluator that he wanted to live with his father, not because he didn't love his mother, but because home felt like his dad. She sat in her car in the courthouse parking lot for 2 hours after that, she told Bree. She went back through 19 years trying to find the single moment she'd made the decision that brought her there, and she couldn't find one. It was 100 small decisions, she said. Each one felt survivable on its own. By the time she understood what they added up to, there was nowhere left to stand. I don't tell you this because I want you to feel sorry for her. I tell you because I think it's the truest thing about how these situations unfold. People rarely detonate their lives in one moment. They do it slowly, choosing what feels easier each time, until the easy path is the only one they've left themselves. The divorce took 7 months. Her attorney leaned hard on the emotional unavailability argument. I was never present, always working. She had felt alone for years. What they were not prepared for was documentation. 19 years of text messages. My work calendar, which I'd kept in a shared app, showing every school pickup, every parent-teacher conference, every Saturday spent at Wyatt's games. Home security footage showing the pattern of my sister's visits, time-stamped and continuous across 16 months. My attorney presented it as a timeline. 81 documented visits, cross-referenced with dates my wife had told me. Her schedule was too full to have dinner with us as a family. The judge reviewed the fault evidence, the asset documentation, and Wyatt's preference statement. My wife received a settlement. I want to be clear. I wasn't trying to leave her with nothing. She received a cash settlement and kept her car. She did not receive the house. The alimony figure her attorney had initially sought was reduced substantially. I received primary custody of Wyatt. I received the house. I walked out of that courthouse on a Thursday afternoon in October with my attorney beside me and my son 2 steps ahead. He was moving fast, like he wanted to get away from that building as quickly as possible. When we got to the sidewalk, he stopped and waited for me to catch up. The sun was out. He put his hand on my shoulder for just a second, the way 16-year-old boys do when they want to say something they don't have language for yet. Then he said, "You hungry? I could eat." I told him I could eat. We went for burgers. We didn't talk about any of it. We talked about his truck fund and whether Ford or Chevy made a better first vehicle, a conversation we'd been having for months, with no resolution and no expectation of one. My sister and my wife tried to make something of what they'd built on top of my family. I heard through Bree, who occasionally spoke with her mother, that it lasted about 14 months. The way Bree described it, once the secrecy was gone and the drama of the exposure had passed, what was between them wasn't enough on its own. They had been bonded by hiding. When there was nothing left to hide, they didn't know what they were to each other. My sister moved to another city. She and my mother exchanged texts on birthdays. My mother answers. But the warmth that was there before, the way my mother used to light up when my sister walked through the door, that's gone. I don't think it comes back from something like this. I don't hate my sister. I want to be straight about that, because I think people expect a different answer. What I feel is a long, quiet sadness. She was my family for over 50 years. That weight doesn't just leave because someone does something unforgivable. It stays in you, heavy and still. But I made a decision early on that I was not going to carry what they'd done like it belonged to me. It didn't. They made their choices. The choices had their consequences. That is the whole story. I'll tell you one thing from the other side of this, because I think it matters. Save everything. Every text, every email, every voicemail. Not because you're expecting disaster, but because the truth matters in ways you can't anticipate, and memory under grief is a broken instrument. I had 19 years of records because I'd built a business, and keeping records is how you build anything that lasts. My attorney told me in our first meeting that I was unusually well prepared for someone who had never been through this. I told her it's just how I run my operation. She said more people should run their lives the same way. She was right. Wyatt turned 17 last spring. He's got a job at the hardware store on weekends, saving for a truck. He wants a Ford. I told him I'd match whatever he puts away. He told me that was unnecessary. I told him it was happening regardless. He went through a stretch last fall where he got very quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight to it. His counselor said that was normal, that teenage boys process loss sideways, not straight through. He'd come home from school, do his homework, eat dinner, sit in the same room as me watching whatever was on without saying much. I didn't push. I just made sure I was there, which I've come to understand is most of the job. One night in December, he came into the kitchen while I was going over bids at the table and sat down across from me. He asked if I ever actually got angry about things, like actually angry. I looked up at him and thought about it honestly. I said yes, sometimes. He said I didn't act like it. I told him that acting on anger had never fixed anything, in my experience. That if you could hold on long enough for it to settle, what was underneath was usually clearer and more useful. He nodded like he was filing that away, somewhere he planned to use it later. Then he got up, got a soda from the fridge, and asked if I wanted anything. I told him I was fine. He went back to his room. That was one of the better conversations I've had in 2 years, and half of it was silence. This morning I woke up before 6, the way I have my whole adult life. The house was quiet in the way it gets before the neighborhood starts moving, a deep, specific quiet that I never used to notice, because I was always already in motion. I notice it now. I made coffee and took it out to the back porch. The yard was still dark at the edges. I could hear a bird somewhere in the tree line that I couldn't name and didn't need to. After a while, Wyatt's light came on upstairs. I heard him moving around. About 20 minutes later, the back door opened, and he came out in his sweatshirt holding his own mug. He started drinking it black this year, which I think he believes makes him an adult. He sat down next to me without saying anything. We watched the yard get light together. I'm not going to tell you the rest of my life is going to be simple, because I don't know that, and I've become careful about what I think I know. But I'll tell you this, I don't wake up with dread anymore. I wake up with a quiet house and a good kid upstairs and a business I built with my own hands and a sense that the things I still have are worth getting up for. Most mornings, that's more than enough.